Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Happy to have you here. And if you are new here, I am also extremely happy to have you here. If you could, please consider subscribing to the channel, as these videos are going to kind of roll out as much as I can possibly make them. Today, I want to talk about the lenses that I use on my cameras pretty much every time I go to a shoot. As you guys know at this point, my two main cameras are the Lumix S5 and the S5 II. And that is an L-mount system that takes some really awesome lenses. Talked about it in my last video about the S5 II. I think there's an absolutely massive range of lenses that you can get for these cameras. And I think they are some of the best out there, in my opinion. From anything I've at least used in my past, Lumix and that L-mount Alliance have some really awesome lenses. So I'm gonna kind of talk about those today. Go over some of the features that I like about each lens and kind of make this a quicker video, not something that's gonna be long and drawn out. This isn't a detailed review of each individual lens, but I will give you some shots of what that lens looks like when using it and what are my favorite things about that. To get started here, I want to talk about my absolute favorite lens to begin with. It pretty much lives on my main A camera the entire day of filming, whether that's a wedding or a client shoot that I go to. And that is the Sigma 24-70. Kind of put this up there and hope, there we go. Good focus, this time at least. When I first started shooting weddings, I connected with a guy who had already been doing weddings for multiple years, and I had talked to him a little bit about kind of how to get started, how to get more clients, how to actually do a lot of things that you need to do for weddings. And luckily for me, he kind of took me under his wing, and he has kind of been mentoring me and giving me plenty of practice to be able to figure out the best way to properly shoot a wedding. I get to see his edits. I get to see what he turns any of my footage into. And it's an incredible thing to see. But one of the things that I think he taught me the most is kind of what gear is best to kind of use on the day. One of the things that I fell in love with was he handed me a Sony camera. Again, in some of my last videos, I haven't been the biggest fan of Sony cameras, but it's not to say I don't like them. They are incredible cameras out there. But the main thing I was excited about was he handed me a camera with a 24-70 lens on it. I had never used a lens like this before. I've always used like prime lenses, or some of the Micro Four Thirds have some zoom ranges on there, some cheaper kit lenses. And once I got my hands on that 24-70, it was an f2.8, and I just zoomed in to get the absolute best background compression I've ever seen because I was still new. I fell in love, and I immediately told myself, when I get home, I'm going to have to order one of those lenses. And that was the Sigma for me. So this lens, I believe, retails for about $1,100. It's a lot cheaper than the Lumix counterpart. That is another 24-70 f2.8. It weighs less from anything I've ever seen. It's a smaller lens. It weighs less than the counterpart with the Lumix lens. And for me, I have had zero issues with this lens. I think autofocus is still fantastic when paired with the S5 II. The only thing I don't necessarily like about it is the reverse zoom on it is a little weird. It took me a minute to get used to that. I kept trying to turn it, I guess to my right and be able to get it to zoom out and get into that 70 millimeter or wherever I want it to be at. But for the most part, I've gotten very used to it. You can autofocus, manual focus with it. It has a bigger thread size on it than any of my other lenses that I use for the L mount, so that was something to get used to. Basically, it's an 82 millimeter. All my other lenses are roughly 67 millimeter. And then I step down to what I need to do for whether it's a 77 millimeter filter that I already had, or I just don't use one at all. Typically on a wedding day, you're not supposed to, but I do increase shutter speed most of the time just to make it quick and easy for me to get through the day and not have to worry about screwing on and off filters throughout the day. Some point I'll get some magnetic filters. This lens has been my favorite. It helps weigh down the camera a little bit more, although my back does not appreciate it by the end of the day. But it has some good weight to it, so I can get a little bit more stable shots. And it just looks incredible. There's something about it I absolutely love, especially when I'm increasing to 70 millimeter. A lot of times I'll have my second shooter on like a 50 millimeter. So he's kind of tight, but then if I want to just get a little bit tighter, or if I really need that wide shot, I've got it all at a constant f2.8. And for me, that is really the sweet spot up until it gets pretty dark. The f2.8 is perfect for me. I get everything I need in focus, but yet have this beautiful background blur with this lens. Again, this is pretty much on my camera for 90% of a wedding day. The only time it comes off is when it gets dark for like dancing times and I need something faster so I can get more light in the lens. Absolutely love this lens. Highly recommend it for anybody that's looking, especially for a cheaper alternative to the Lumix line. I don't think you need a Pro or any of that. I think the Sigma f2.8 is the perfect way to go. Next on my list, also kind of discovered by working with my mentor, so to speak, for the wedding gig, is a 70-200. Now, I've known about these lenses for a while, and I knew it was something I was going to need at some point, but I kind of looked at it as the f2.8 Sigma looks really good. The 1.8 obviously lets in a lot of light with my other prime lenses, but what am I going to do about the 70-200? Because these are not cheap. When you pair this in the L-mount system, they can go for nearly $2,100 in an f2.8 configuration. So I was kind of scared to get this one specifically, which is the Lumix S70-200. It's an f4 all the way through, and I was kind of nervous, especially for any indoor shoots. But with weddings, and most of the time, and you hope at least this is going to happen, you're shooting outdoors a lot. So the f4, as far as worrying about low light situations, wasn't that major of a concern of mine. The background separation when it comes to like a 200mm zoom in looks incredible. I think it's some of the best bokeh I've ever seen on a lens. The range that I have on this thing is incredible. To go from 70, which, you know, just meets right at the end of my 24-70, obviously, all the way up to 200mm is extremely versatile for any type of wedding scenario I've basically put myself in. And it actually caused me to get a Micro Four Thirds version of it, which is significantly smaller. I'll actually grab it here. This is the Micro Four Thirds version. This is the big boy that goes for the L-mount full frame system. It's incredible to see the difference, but this thing just feels so incredible in the hand. I've actually taken this and I've used it handheld before. It does have optic image stabilization on it. Say that 3 times fast. And I'm able to do like sports shooting with it. I'm able to probably go out and do some good wildlife shooting with it. It looks incredible. I love the way these mounts are. It's just kind of cool because it was new for me. And of course, now I've seen them over the past couple of years, but it was new to me to not see your camera essentially being mounted on your tripod. It is the mount that's on here with this lens. So an incredible value in my opinion. I saved a lot of money by getting this over an f2.8 version. Again, the f2.8 Lumix is around $2,100. There is a Sigma version that I think came out after I bought this, if I'm not mistaken, because I did not see it when I originally bought this. It's around $1,500, and I think I paid about $1,200 to $1,300, somewhere in that range. Handheld features are completely fine with it. It is crystal clear, which is something that, you know, some people want in a lens. I know there's this whole vintage aesthetic out there, and I want my lens to have some imperfections to it, but I'm all about, I'm doing client work and I'm doing stuff like that. I'm not shooting my first feature film. I need to be crystal clear. I need to look great. I need to look sharp. And this lens absolutely does that for me. Basically, this is my bride lens. The filter size on this window is 77mm, so it is also different than the other S prime lenses that are out there. I have zero issues with this indoor, especially paired with these cameras. Be able to boost the ISO to 4000 and not have to worry about any noise or anything. And then I get a crystal clear image out of this. I highly recommend. And before we get to the last lens that I absolutely love, I do have somewhat of an honorable mention. I don't use this as much. Pretty much at all. I think I used it when I first got the camera. I'm gonna try to get you guys some shots of it outside, just some quick sneak peeks of my terrible backyard right now because it's been fall, there's leaves everywhere, it's been raining nonstop, it seems like, so I haven't had a chance to clean it up. This is the kit lens that you can get with the camera, and typically, again, you can find the S5 II for $1,500 to $1,700 with the kit lens. If you want to find it, if not, it's a $350 lens, I believe. It is a 20 to 60mm. It's an f3.5 to a 5.6, I believe, which is what most kit lenses are. It's a fairly small lens. It doesn't weigh hardly anything, and it's, to me, an incredible value. Again, if you're going outside or you're going traveling or something, you want something light to pack but still have some good range, I think this is a viable option. I think it's a good lens, and if you are getting into the L-mount system and you want something to get started with, this is not a bad option to go. Outside of maybe getting a prime, which again, I talked about in my last videos, that pretty much right now, both of the cameras that are my A and B camera, you can pretty much buy it with a prime, and the prime is essentially free. It's a good option out there if you're just getting started into the L-mount Alliance. And last but not least, the lens you guys have been watching me on this entire time. It is my second favorite to my 24-70. And again, the 24-70 is all because of the versatility of it, to be able to go from wide to super tight. The lens that you're viewing me on right now is one that I use for most of these videos. It's one that I prefer on my second camera, as I spoke about earlier. And when it comes to dancing at nighttime, essentially, when it's dark in the room and there's just DJ lights going, and especially if I'm unable to light the room at that time to throw off the vibe, that is the 50mm f1.8. I'll give you some B-roll of what it looks like. It's pretty much the same size as the 20-60, maybe a little bit smaller. 67mm thread. It's got an autofocus manual focus switch on it. That's it. It is a dead simple lens. You just throw it on, you hit record, and that's it. It looks incredible. The background separation with that f1.8 is absolutely beautiful. One of my favorite things about the lens, anytime you can get your hands on a prime, especially if you're looking to maybe shoot something in the future, like whether that's high-end client work or maybe your first short film, the ability to have a prime lens that you can kind of move around and really make yourself, in my opinion, a better filmmaker. You don't have the options to just zoom in and out. You got to know where to position yourself, know where to frame it. There's no reframing the lens with the 24-70, especially when I'm doing like bigger photo shoots with the bridal party or something like that. If the bridal party gets smaller, I zoom in so we don't have just a lot of wasted space. Most of the time, the camera's on a tripod, so I'm not just holding it the entire hour or two that we're doing pictures. And just so we can get those shots real quick, few seconds of each, I zoom in and out the entire time. But with the 50mm, I would constantly have to move back and forth if I wanted to cut out that space. But without that, what I started on, and even for my Micro Four Thirds, I was using a 25, which is a 50mm equivalent. The 50mm is my favorite focal length of all of them, out of anything that I've tried. I think a 35 would probably be next, just because you can get a little wider. You don't have to worry about being so close to somebody, or rather backing up because you are too close to the person and you can't get everything you want in frame. But if you are just getting started out, this is a $350 lens. I just looked it up. I don't know if that's a sell price or not, but it's a $350 lens at an f1.8. And if you are just getting started, outside of getting a kit lens because you want the range, if you are not worried about range and you want to just go out and shoot the best footage that you possibly can, or take some of the best pictures that you ever will, hands down the 50mm, especially at $350, is the absolute go-to. I think Lumix has done a fantastic job of giving us very, very affordable prime lenses from 24, I think, all the way up to 100, if I'm not mistaken. And they're all less than $1,000 and they look incredible. This is the best lens I've ever used in my entire life. And I have a really, really good Micro Four Thirds lens that I'm gonna do a video on one day. It's the 10-25. If you're familiar with that, it's a Leica Alliance lens for Micro Four Thirds. Basically before this L-mount Alliance, as far as I know at least, was really big. It looks incredible. It's an f1.7 all the way through, from 10 all the way to 25. So that's a 20 to 50mm equivalent. It looks great, don't get me wrong, but it's massive. And that's because you got some range to it. You got a constant f1.7 all the way through. And it is, I don't know, about 4 times the price of the 50mm lens. If you're just getting started and you need the best lens that's still affordable, the 50mm lens is your way to go. I appreciate everybody that stopped by. Once again, if you are not a subscriber, please consider giving me a subscription. It is free and easy for you to do. All you gotta do is click the button. Anybody that has any questions about any of these lenses, maybe a scenario, do you recommend it for shooting for this, or have you ever used it for shooting in this condition, this scenario, feel free to leave that in the comments down below. If you wanna see more details about the lens, maybe have me just do an entire video on the lens, walk around or something, I'm all about it. I'm happy to do whatever it is to help people make better decisions out there. And that's sort of my goal with this channel. So let's make some better decisions. Let's buy the right gear. Let's not overspend. Let's not overget, because I fall victim to that quite often. I feel like I absolutely have to get something. I feel like I need to get this or I'm not going to be able to film. And that's simply not true. You can get away with a lot less than you think. All of these lenses are fantastic. I recommend all of them, including the kit lens, which I could do more on at some point, but there are some good videos out there that I've seen. It was kind of my thoughts when I bought this camera. I didn't own any L-mount lenses at all, so I looked and said, if I get the kit lens with it, how's that going to work out? And any video I've seen, it looks great. And then I got very lucky when I bought mine. It came with a kit lens and this 50mm lens for, I think, $2,100, which is an incredible value. Again, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.